When are you going to review your car, Isaac? Now, 1995 Chevy Monte Carlo LS. Now, before I review it, I'm going to try and not spin out here because this is a very dangerous spot. Spinning. This is because they don't plow the roads by my house. Sitting behind the wheel of my Monte Carlo. 85,068 miles and 8/10. What's good about this car? Well, it's red. I mean, red cars are cool if you ask me. Let's start talking about it though. I've owned this car for 6.5 months. I bought it on July 17th, 2021. And since I've owned it, yes, it's been reliable. I've never had a time where it has not started. What about this car is good, per se? Well, we'll start from the front with the power plant. Being that this is an LS model that is pretty well equipped for an LS, this has the 3.1 liter 3100 V6, also known as the L82 engine. 160 horsepower, 185 pound-feet of torque, and I've read 160, I've read 165 for horsepower. It's somewhere in that range. Mated to, of course, a wonderful 4T65E transmission, which pretty much every GM product back in the day used, most of their cars at least. I don't know why this person is going so slowly. I've actually heard that the transmission is the weakest link on these. It's a 4-speed automatic, and the 4th speed is overdrive. The engines in these are pretty good, the 3100 V6. They're pretty reliable. The weakest part of them is really the intake manifold gaskets, which you'll get most of them if you don't take care of them. This one has 85,000 miles. It does have intake manifold gasket leaks, although I do the right thing, which is to check the oil once a week, which I do. I don't do a ton of driving, but I check it once a week. When the oil starts to get milky looking, that's when you know you need to do your repairs. But the car runs, and it cruises perfectly, and this person is kicking up all kinds of shit onto me. I've really, since I bought this, well, I guess we should talk about fuel economy, since that's something probably most people are going to want to know. Fuel economy sucks. Fuel economy in this thing is pretty poor. The MSRP rates it as 19 city, 29 highway. Yeah, no. I would say on average, I get maybe 16 in the city. And most of my driving is city driving. I do very little highway driving. Most of my driving, yeah, it's city, and most of it is pretty piss poor. You know, like I said, maybe 17 in the city. You're not going to hit 20. You are not going to hit 20 in this thing. No way. Even in overdrive, which is what you should drive in. That's what I drive in. In terms of highway... Oh, now you decide to get over, you fucking bro-dozing piece of shit. Kia Soul going slowly. Highway, I would say 25. In the very few highway drives that I've done in this thing, that's about what I get. It's not too good, especially for a V6 front-wheel drive car. Of course, this is front-wheel drive, which helps a lot in the winter. This thing has gotten stuck exactly 0 times. Whereas my mom's 2019 Toyota, why are we stopped at a green light? My mom's 2019 Toyota RAV4, oh my god, that thing is a nightmare to drive in the winter. Literally, that car will get stuck anywhere. You have 6 inches of snow, you're getting stuck. And because it's a modern car, when you try and rev the engine, it goes brah, brah, brah. It doesn't let you rev it. It's busy over here today, I guess. It's not very good. This thing, with its all-season Bridgestone tires, I've never gotten it stuck. I can go over things that my mom's car couldn't dream of going over. And I don't have traction control. This car doesn't even have that as an option. I have ABS, and that's about the only safety feature I have. Speaking of safety, this car is pretty safe. When it came out, it was rated good for the IIHS tests that they did. It only has 2 airbags, one here and then one on the dashboard over there. There's no side airbags or anything. Safety-wise, it's pretty safe, like I said. The 2 airbags makes up for it because, you know, the way it's designed, the airbags are very well designed. They're not, you know, they're not going to delay late. They were tested. GM did make decent airbags at this point. God, these roads suck ass. Safety, yeah, pretty safe. Of course, I've never gotten into an accident, so I can't truly tell you it's safe, but from what I can go off of, I would say this is a pretty safe vehicle. What else should we talk about? Hey, there's a Scion XB. My mom used to have one of those. Turning circle sucks. That's something maybe you could have figured out by this thing. The turning circle on this car is absolutely abhorrent. You try to fit into any average size parking spot, you're going to have to do a couple maneuvers. This thing is terrible to park, which is weird because it's a big car. It's 200 inches long, but it's not tall or super wide. It is bad to try and park this thing. I'm telling you, it is not enjoyable whatsoever. Power-wise, you know, driving it in the city, it'll keep up. I mean, I do pretty much all my driving is city driving. You know, it doesn't have any trouble staying up with traffic. It'll get up and go. Highway driving is a little iffy. This car is pretty unstable at highway speeds just because of how long it is. You know, pretty much any wind, you know, you feel the car, you have to steer. That's another thing. You can see the steering wheel. You'll look how much play is in the steering wheel. The car is just barely moving. I can do this pretty much and not have it move. There's a lot of play in the steering wheel. In terms of driving it, like, you know, comfort-wise, the pedals are easy to reach. They're pretty big. It is hard to drive this car with my work boots on because the pedals, there's a big plate under here. There's no knee airbag, so there really shouldn't be a plate, but there's a giant plate, and my boots have gotten caught there many times. In terms of, like, steering wheel size and everything, I mean, it's comfortable. I mean, the steering wheel's good size. I have a cover on it, obviously, to keep it protected. It's a leather-wrapped wheel, but I like to keep it in good shape. It's, you know, it works. It's not the nicest, it's not the nicest steering wheel. It doesn't have any buttons or anything on it. This car does have cruise control, and it does work. It's on the stock here. ABS it does have, safety-wise. The mirrors are tiny. That's one thing you should learn. This rear view mirror is absolutely, I mean, you cannot see out the entire rear windshield. I have to basically do this. The side mirrors are also tiny because they have the sport mirrors. Yeah. The mirror size in this car is not good. In fact, I'm pretty sure when this thing came out, it was cited for having poor visibility in the back. There's an old Buick LeSabre, which you might be able to see, with the trunk open. Interesting. Visibility is pretty poor, especially when you turn around and you see a fucking foot-long C-pillar, because this is a coupe, between where the rear window ends and the trunk. There is a giant blind spot there. Because the rear windows in this car are not that big, because they're, you know, they're like cone-shaped almost, or they're not cone-shaped, but, you know, they're sort of square. Oh yeah, it's a green light. I shouldn't have pulled up that far. There's another Monte Carlo. It's a purple one. That's a 6th gen. SS, too. What were we talking about? It's fucking Prius not driving very nicely. Yeah, mirrors are tiny. It's not the best. It really, the mirrors are not very good. That was drive right. Cool. Other than that, other than the giant C-pillar and the small mirrors, you know, the A-pillars aren't that big. There's not a whole bunch of, you know, visibility blocking. Challenger, what are you doing out in this weather? Go back to your garage. You know, like I said, the A-pillars aren't that big. The whole car itself is pretty, it's not claustrophobic, but it's not big. You know, it's a full-size car, but it's not that big. I mean, if I do this, my head touches the headliner. Now, I sit with the seat all the way up, so that could probably be attributed to that. The seats are comfortable. This has the optional bucket seats that are leather, and the leather is nice. I will give it to this car. The leather is very, very nice. Something about 90s cars, especially GM cars with the leather, it is just so plush. I drove a 2005 Lexus ES330 that I was looking at possibly buying to replace this, sort of in a pinch. The leather was not as nice. It was not as nice. Now, that car was very nice. It was a nice Lexus. You know, I hate Toyotas pretty much, but I do like Lexuses. I will say the styling, the ride, I like Lexuses. I will say that. Yeah, the seats are comfortable. Pretty good bolstering. It's pretty soft, so, you know, you're not going to have any super sporty, like, you know, driving with this thing. Handling, you know, it's pretty bad. You know, this thing has a lot of body roll, and it's probably because of just, you know, how long and wide and, you know, grumbly this car is. There's a lot of body roll. You know, you are not going to be cornering anything in this thing. There is a ton of body roll. What else? Power windows. Power windows work good. I'm trying to get my feet to warm up because they're cold. Power mirrors, they work. Power locks, they work. It's a two-door car, so power locks are pretty much useless. Door handles work down here. I will say the doors are kind of heavy. They're not immensely heavy, but they're heavier than like a Lumina sedan doors would be. A Lumina sedan would have lighter doors, which is probably because these doors are long. I mean, they go all the way back here behind my seat. The doors are kind of heavy, and even my friend, he's, you know, he rides with me a lot. He's like, God damn it, these doors are heavy. And they are. They're very wide, they're very heavy. Nice signal, bitch. Would have been nice to know. Doors are heavy. But the nice thing about having the long doors is that it makes back seat access a bit easier. So the back seat in this car, you could fit 5 people in this car. Obviously, this one has the center console and the shifter down here, even though I would much prefer to have a column shifter. This one has it down there. The back seats are definitely not a jail cell. My dad had a Civic when I was a kid that was a 2-door. The back seats in that were a jail cell. You know, even with the front seat about in this position, the back seats were pretty much touching. It was like a Saturn Ion. It was tiny. This thing has, you can tell that it's the same layout as the Lumina with the way the back seat is laid out. And really, once you're back there, the back seats aren't that bad. It's really just access, especially because unlike a lot of foreign cars, when you move the seat forward, the bottom doesn't slide. It's just the backrest that comes forward. So access is a little bit difficult. You know, you remove the seat belts from the little guide loops. It makes it slightly easier, but really, once you're back there, it's okay. Headroom is not the greatest. My head, when I sit... Whoops, South Carolina. Go back home, buddy. Go back home to your warmth. Headroom is not great. You know, it's kind of like this. You know, your head sort of is pretty much up against the glass. And I'm only 5'7", so, it could be better. I think that's just because they wanted to make it slopey looking, to make it look, you know, like a coupe, which is fine. The middle seat is narrow. The Lumina had a wider middle seat. It does have a little fold-down armrest. It does not have cup holders in it, but it does have a nice fold-down armrest. And it has a lap belt for the middle seat. There's no shoulder belt. It's one of those lap belts that just sort of sits there and flops around, and it will move around if you take a curve fast and see it slide across the seat. Never sat 3 people across back there, but with 2 people, it's plenty comfortable. Even when we looked at the car, my grandfather rode back there, and he's about 6 foot. The passenger seat was up a little farther than it is right now, but even he said, this is comfortable. It's, you know, there's room back here. This isn't bad. It's not a bad back seat, it's just access. That's the biggest thing, and that's why a lot of coupes get a bad rap. Can we go, please? It's a green light. Hello. Thank you. That's why a lot of coupes get a bad rap, because the back seats are tiny, quote unquote. Now, a Cobalt, yes, a Cobalt coupe will have tiny back seats. Hell, I think that this thing has bigger back seats than a Cobalt sedan has, which is saying something. Would I want to ride back there on a long trip? Probably not, but the back seats are usable. I guess that's the best way to describe it, is the back seats are usable. Like I said, I've never had 5 people. You could get an optional bench seat in the front. Now, here's something I didn't know. The Luminas mostly had bench seats, you know, unless you got the higher end models. Those had lap belts right here, so you could seat a middle person. I did not find this out until I went to a junkyard and took a look at a Lumina or a Monte Carlo from this time with the bench seat. Even if you get the bench seat in the Monte Carlo, it is not a 6-seater. I didn't know that. I assumed that because it's the same as the Lumina, you would have a 6th seat here. That's not true. There is no middle seat belt for the bench for the middle. So it is actually still a 5-seater. It just has the shifter is just moved up here, so this is free. There's nothing here. If you want 6, I guess you have to go to Lumina. But really, you know, seating-wise, this is fine. You know, I don't carry regularly a ton of people in my back seat. I had one friend ride back there when I had someone in the front, and he's pretty short. He's like 5'5", so he rode behind that seat. He said it was fine, but it's okay. Visibility is definitely a helper. The windows are big enough that you can still see a good bit out of them, which definitely helps. God, the freaking windshield is dirty. It's fine. I wanted you guys to hear a shift there. It's just fine. That's the best way to describe it. It's just fine. The front seats are where you want to be in this car, really. The driver's seat is powered, you know, except the backrest. There is a manual adjuster for the backrest. Passenger seat is completely manual. There's no height adjustment, no lumbar. Well, this doesn't have lumbar, but it's just the same lever, and then there's just a lever under the seat to move it forward and back. It's not, you know, this is powered. I would prefer a manual seat only because that makes it easier if you want to slide it forward to get to the back, which I never do, but it would make it easier in theory. That seat rail needs to be greased, I think, a little bit, because it is kind of, you know, it's fine in the most part, but then when you start going towards the back of the, once you start going towards the back, that's when it starts to stick. If you're sitting in it, it's fine. It's just railroad. So that brings me to the next point, and that is ride quality. Poor. Hey, look, a purple Saturn Ion, or L Series, I'm sorry. You don't see those too often. Cool. Ride quality is not that good. You would think it would be for such a big, heavy sedan. It's not. You go over a bump, and it's, you know, it's not bouncy, but it's just, you know, you feel everything. And that comes with insulation, too. Insulation is not that good. You know, you can hear a lot from the outside. On the highway, it's pretty bad. You can hear, here's another railroad track. You can see it's pretty, not too great. It's okay, I guess, but, you know, see, this is a bumpy road. You can see the whole, everything's noisy, and you can hear a lot of noise from the tires. Tire noise is pretty pronounced. This one has the optional 16-inch tires with the rims. There was an option for 15-inch Steelies. This has the 16s because it's an option-dot model. It's passable, the ride quality. I think having bigger tires helps. I have all seasons on there right now, Bridgestones. I think I'm going to get a set of winter tires next year, like dedicated winter tires, and put them on myself, because I really don't care for the, you know, the all seasons. They're fine for the summer, but yeah, these tires are not, they're not that old. I got them in July. So, let's talk about features a little. Halogen headlights, no daytime running lights, which I like. The 97 models had daytime running lights. They added them to, I guess, satisfy the Canadian spec models. Climate control's alright. This one does not have dual zone. I know that was an option in the later years. This one doesn't have it. The AC will take a while to get cold, but once it gets cold, it's cold. The heat will heat you out of the place. You know, I turn this all the way up. Like, it'll suffocate you. I usually keep it on 1 because that is, after 10 minutes, that just, you know, it heats the car up like there's sun inside. It's awesome. Heat is great. So, let's see what else. The radio, it's a radio. It's just a generic Delco radio from the 90s. It's a CD player, AM, FM, that's it. That's all you got. And it works. It's okay. It's not very nice. It's a CD player, and it's from the era where if you go over a railroad track, the CD skips. I've sort of been half-heartedly looking for an aftermarket deck to replace it. This radio works. It's just, you know, it's a 90s car radio. 90s car radios are not good. Most 90s cars by now have aftermarkets in them. I like keeping my car stock, except in cases like that. The vents are very nice. They're easy to move. My friend fucked with them, which that would be why I'm not getting any heat. Dome light right here and map lights on the mirrors. They're set to come on with the door, and it has quote-unquote theater lighting, which means they'll dim after a few seconds when you close the door, but they won't go off. Gauge dimmer works. It has blue interior lighting, or it's actually more white, I guess, than blue. Like I said, halogen headlights. It works, you know. Alright, this road's kind of bumpy, so we'll get a chance to test the suspension. I know the Z34 models came with an upgraded suspension, which would probably do wonders on this. Gauges, they're easy to read. It's got a gas gauge and a temperature gauge on the left, speedo in the middle, which is my preference, and then a tach on the right, which was optional. I'm glad I have the tach, it's nice. Headlight switch is here instead of on the stock. No stock here, like most American cars. Wiper controls here. Pretty simple to operate. Wipers work. Power windows, like I said. The driver's one can go down automatically if you press it down hard enough. Passenger's one is regular, I guess you could say. This road is pretty bumpy. You can get a good test of how this thing is. There's a Grand Prix in red. That's, oh, it's a coupe. That thing is sick. Meh. Features are alright for a 90s car, you know. No sunroof, which is fine. It's, in my opinion, a sunroof is just a thing to leak. Pothole here. It rides about the same as my father's car. Well, no, it's better than that. His car is just jittery because it's a German car. Ride, yeah, like I said, it's alright. CD storage down here, shifter. It's got one cigarette lighter, which does work. I don't know what they're doing. Center console here, it's alright. It's not that big. One cup holder with an insert. The models that had the column shifter had a cup holder here and one in front of the radio, but of course, being that this has the floor shifter, that whole assembly is removed. The cigarette lighter is always on, which you could see as a downside or a plus. I personally see it as more of a downside because I have a dash cam and I have to unplug it every time I get out of the car. I could hardwire it, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend the time and do that. It's not that hard to just plug it in. I do have the original cigarette lighter adapter for this because I did come with one. We're in Lansing now, and this road is terrible. That's a good railroad track for you. My freaking tripod is rattling, too. Ride gets a little redundant. Like I said, after a while, you know, you start to feel the effects of the ride on this. It's not that good. What else? Features, well, you know, the biggest redeeming factor of this car, I think, is the leather seats. It really does make a difference because I don't really like cloth seats in general. I would demo the horn, but I'm in Lansing, and so I'm pretty sure if I do that, I'm going to get, like, freaking jumped or something. Wood trim here, wood trim there. The glove box is small, but you can lock it. The seats are nice. Has an ashtray right here. That's pretty much it. It's about all this thing has. It does have remote start, but that's not factory. It has a nice butterfly thing on the ignition, as I've heard Jay Smart call it. Sun visors are poorly designed because they block your entire view, so I barely ever use them. The passenger's one has vanity lights, this one does not. I don't know why, and ironically, this one has a sliding cover and that one has a lift-up cover. I don't really know why. That was advertised as, yeah, you get a vanity mirror on the passenger side, or rather, it's a much bigger mirror with lights. I don't know why they didn't put one on the driver's side. It's really kind of stupid. What else? I guess we're getting sorted to the end, so we can start to talk about what I've had to do to it. In general, it's been reliable. I haven't done any major things to it. Couple things I've done. About a month after I bought the car, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about. Oh, trunk space. It's big. The trunk is very good size. It has a spare tire well in the trunk with a donut. You know, it'd be nicer if it was a full size, but a donut works. Let's talk about problems. So about a month, the first problem I had was about a month after I bought the car, the mirror fell down. I went to adjust it like this, and I discovered that it had fallen before and that the previous owner just did not put it up very well. Fixed that, got some glue from AutoZone, it was fine. Once in a while, I'll have to push it back because it'll sort of jiggle itself loose again. It is manually dimming, you can move it around, I always keep it on the regular. So that was the first problem. Second problem I had with it was this center console lid, which sort of comes up and then sits, and then it comes back down. It fell off. Like, there's two pieces of plastic that sort of hold it in place, and it had glue on it when I bought it, so I knew it had fallen off before, but then it fell off again. I glued it again, it fell off. I glued it again, it fell off. This time I glued it in place using a popsicle stick and some paper towel wadded up, and it seems to be holding. You just don't want to, you don't want to force it real hard or anything, and be gentle with it. But it works. I mean, I can lift it up without having to take the lid off. So that was the second problem. The third and final problem I've had with it was the passenger's windshield wiper got frozen to the windshield, and I forgot to pry it up, so I went to use it, and basically the windshield wiper arm sits on a little shaft where the motor is that's, what's the right word, threaded, and because I forgot to unfreeze it, the wiper motor tried to move the wiper that was stuck to the windshield, and it just completely stripped it out, and to the point where you could just move the wiper freely, and it broke. So for a while I was without a passenger's wiper, which is not the best thing. Thankfully it was winter, so there wasn't a lot to wipe, but I was without a passenger's wiper for about a month. Went to the junkyard, got another wiper arm off a different Monte Carlo, and then I got a separate one off of Lumina, so I would have two spares. And I put the one from, I think, the Lumina on, and it fixed the problem, and now both wipers work. That's it, though. Those are the only problems I've had with it, so nothing major. I haven't done anything with the engine, nothing with the transmission. Also, one other small thing that broke, this reflector here. This side has come unglued now twice, and it's starting to do it again a little bit. You take some glue, push it up in there, use a vise, hold it in, and it's good, but sometimes this will droop on one side, but that's a pretty easy fix. The brakes are a bit squeaky, but that's how it's been since I got it, and the brakes still have life left in them. I checked them out when I bought the car, stopping. The car has ABS, but it takes a while to lock up. The shifter, I can do it now. Park, back to drive. It's alright. I would prefer a column shifter, but the button gets frozen sometimes in the winter, or rather it won't disengage. Park, reverse, neutral, overdrive, drive, 2, 1. There's no L, it's just 2 or 1 separately. Overdrive is a position on the shifter as opposed to a button, which I actually prefer. It is the 4th position because they intend for you to use that, so like most cars, 4th position is drive. Center console's nice and thin. I can fit my middle finger and my thumb around it, which is nice. It's not like having a moat between you and the passenger, and it doesn't go all the way. It's a full length in that it goes from... I'm hitting every red light. It's full length in that it goes from back here to the seats to the front, but there's a giant hole between the actual end of the center console and then the end of like where the firewall is. I can stick my foot through there, and if you look at the right angle from the passenger side, you can see the pedals. Yeah, that's a GM thing. A lot of their cars from the 2000s and stuff had that, the Grand Ams and stuff. It's not, you can see the pedals from the passenger side. My mom's car, my dad's car, you can do that, which I don't mind it. That's one thing to talk about too. This is a front-wheel drive car, and there is no transmission hump in the back seat. The entire floor back there is completely flat. In other words, the behind the seats and the middle are the same. I love it. And it's actually a selling feature of, because when they compare this to the Ford Thunderbird, which is an odd comparison since that's rear-wheel drive and V8 at the time, they're like, yeah, Thunderbird has a giant hump because it's rear drive. Because this is front, there's no hump. And even the newer Monte Carlos, they have a giant hump. I love that. That's like one of my favorite things about this car, is that you could comfortably put 3 people back there because there's no giant hump to put your feet on. Up here there's a hump, but it pretty much ends right about where the seats start, which is nice. Black interior. They offered a beige interior. This one's black. I guess I can do the horn now because no one's here. It's a very old style horn. I like it though. You know, you press on the top of the steering wheel and, or here. It's not down here because they were still trying to integrate the horn into the steering wheel with the airbag. So it doesn't have horn buttons like a Honda, but you have to press on the upper part of the airbag compartment. That's pretty much it. That's a good review of this car. You know, I have very few complaints about it. Is there anything about this car I would change? Yes. First and foremost, I would give it a column shifter. That would go a long way for me. Second, it just needs more power. This thing is gutless. I mean, you do 0 to 60. I did a 0 to 60 test. Now, granted, it was an overdrive. It took 11 seconds. Not good. It'll spin the tires a little bit. It could use more power. Now, they offered a 3.4 liter V6 with these. And those engines are not very good. It was not the 3400. It was a 3.6 liter dual overhead cam. This is a push rod. That was a dual overhead cam engine. And they were not that good. The 3.1 is a better engine. There's another Monte Carlo, a silver one, being driven by some old bearded guy. They're pretty common still, the 6th gen ones. The 5th gen ones are kind of rare because they didn't sell a lot of them. They sold the most of them in 95. That's the most common year you'll find. They never gave the 3800 to these. They did in the Lumina, but they didn't in these, unfortunately. Would have been nice, because I would have tried to find one with the 3800, although it's pretty hard to find one. There's a LeSabre. It really... A 3800 would have gone a long way in this thing. Like, a long way. It would have made this thing quite a bit more enjoyable to drive. I would have rather driven this, you know, with the 3800. Of course, you also lose a bit of fuel mileage, but it's not a whole bunch. Cobalt. There's a Hyundai Elantra Touring in front of me. You don't see those too often anymore. Pieces of junk. You know, really, these cars were not... They're reliable, but they weren't designed to be kept. These cars, I would say about 250,000 miles is probably the good lifespan that you will get out of these. Yeah, 250. I would say that's a pretty good lifespan. If you can get 250,000 miles out of a Lumina or a Monte Carlo, that's pretty good. You've gotten about, I would say anything more than that, you've exceeded the lifespan. Oh God, please don't stop on the railroad tracks. Damn it, why are you making me stop on the railroad tracks? Yeah. You get 250K, that's about end of life. I would not pump any more money into it after that. This one's still pretty young at 85, 84, 85,000, 80... Sorry, it sounds so stupid. I wouldn't put in any big... I mean, if the transmission goes out in this thing, it's going off to the crusher. I'm not replacing a transmission in this. It's not worth it. That seems to be the weakest link, though. I read a lot of people say, oh, I had a Lumina 250K, the transmission blew, engine still run fine, I junked it. The transmission is really the weakest link in these. And as long as you don't do any crazy racing, which unfortunately a lot of these were subjected to over the years, you'll be fine. You know, I wouldn't give this to someone with no mechanical knowledge, because the 3.1 does require a bit to keep it going. That's the other thing too. The 3.1 was in Malibu, Centuries, this, Lumina, couple of the Grand Prix. They are the most abused engine. The car, especially Buick Centuries, these cars get bought by people who have no interest in maintenance. They just need a car. They don't change the oil. They don't change anything. They don't check the transmission. They don't check the engine. They don't take it in for tune-ups. Nothing. So they wear out. Looking at the LeSabre next to me. I always like those. They're kind of bubbly, but it's all up to personal taste. I love this car. You know, it's really, it depends on what you're looking for. If you just need a car and you like two-door cars, which I tend to like coupes, look at this. You won't regret it. You find one of these and it's less than 100,000 miles, you should probably buy it just because it's hard to find them with under 100K. I don't really watch the miles on this thing much. If I was gonna like sell it to a museum, I would. If I was gonna sell it to a museum, I wouldn't drive it in the winter. You know, I take it to the car wash once a week. Yet that doesn't always prevent rust. You know, this car doesn't have any rust because it was in Arizona for a lot of its life. You know, I make sure it doesn't have a lot of rust, but I don't undercoat it. You know, when it starts to rust, it starts to rust. That's pretty much where I'm at. You know, this is one of its first winters in Michigan, so you know, if it starts to rust, it starts to rust. If I have to Bondo it, then I'll Bondo it. But it's meh. It's just meh. That's really all this car is. It's just meh. It'll catch your eye because it's red and it's not a car you commonly see. If you're a car guy, it will catch your eye probably because, you know, you're like, whoa, I haven't seen one of those Monte Carlos in a long time. Like that. But meh. It's just meh. Last thing to talk about is fuel mileage. Not good. I talked about fuel economy. I reset my trip odometer every time I get gas. I just filled up at 3/4 of a tank yesterday. I'm full now, and it only went 210 miles. But most of my driving is from here to school, which is 3 miles from my house. So I don't put a lot of mileage on the car as it is. I bought the car in July with 82,100 on it, and right now it's at 85. So in 6.5 months, I put 3,000 miles on it. So, you know, that's really, it's less than average by quite a bit. I don't put as much mileage on as a lot of people do. Average people put 10, 15 on, 12. I don't. I put less than that because I don't have to drive very far. Now, starting next year, I'm going to be driving to Mason every day for my trade school. That's going to be putting some more mileage. Maybe I'll sell the car. I don't know. But I love it. I love this thing. I do have a name for it, by the way. It's Cheri. Because it's red. It's actually torch red. But I call it Cheri because it's pretty much cherry red, you know. There's no arguing that it's essentially a cherry red car. So I named it Cheri. Whoa! That's a weird car wash. Is that new? That must be new. You know, yeah, it's Cheri. It's a she, obviously, because in my opinion, all cars are she. Why, I don't know. But also, like for example, you put gas in the car, you put the stick in the hole. When you go to put the dash cam in, you plug the stick into the hole. You know, it's like it's a male to female connection. Same with the gas. Same with adding, well, you know, the gas is the best I can give it. It's a she because, you know, if I was taking the car and putting it on the gas, or the car had a big stick that you put in a gas tank, then maybe it would be a he. But cars are she. That's how I've always thought of it. That's how most people think of it. Because there's female connections, you know. You put things inside of holes. It's a female. So that's pretty much going to conclude this very long, extensive video about my Cheri. I don't know why I just said my Cheri. About Cheri, my 1995 Chevy Monte Carlo LS with 3,100 and 85,000 miles. I love it. I have very few complaints other than ride quality, and I wish that the freaking shifter was up here. That's pretty much it. That's all I got to say about it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe and click a like if you like what you see, and follow me on the web, wix.com/theelevatorworld/fans. Bye-bye.